Call to order the July 11th public hearing of the City of Prescott Preservation Commission. Members present at this meeting are, starting on my right, Russ Buchanan, Christy Hastings, Gary Edelbrock. On my left is Robert Burford. My name is Michael Todd. This is an open public hearing and is being videotaped and tape recorded by the city. The proceedings are being televised by representatives of the public media, local cable and/or radio stations, and may also be rebroadcast. The number of commission members present is 5. It will require 4 votes for a majority. All parties wishing to be heard on an issue are required to raise their hands and be recognized by the chairman prior to speaking. Speakers will be expected to state their name and address for the record so that we may know who is speaking and be able to contact them at a later date if necessary. Please turn off any cell phones or electronic devices, and if you haven't done so, please sign the attendance roster before leaving the meeting. Our planning representative today will be the planning manager, Mr. George Worley, who's going to replace Cap Moody, who's at the State Historic Preservation Conference today. And our recording secretary is Suzanne Derryberry. All right, that being the case, the first item is approval of the minutes of the June 6th meeting. Has everybody had an opportunity to review the minutes? Are there any questions or comments? That being the case, is there a motion on approval of those minutes?
Mr. Chairman, motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve by Mr. Edelbrock. Is there a second?
I second
A
that.
second. All those in favor signify by raising your right hand and saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion passes 5-0. The second item is HP 14-010-208 West Gurley, Historic Preservation District 1. It's a request for approval for signage along the base of an awning. Mr. Worley will make the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a request to install some signage along the base of the awning shown on the picture above. So this is the blank awning as it originally existed. It is part of the overall color scheme of the building. The awnings in front and the awnings along this side are all the green, approximately the same shade of green. The proposal is to install a bracket attached to the rear face of the awning frame and bent around to the front to allow for the existing awning and the existing frame to remain untouched, other than the bolt holes at the back side of it. This would allow an easy removal of this proposed new sign band and restoration of the awning to its existing condition with no work on the awning itself. You simply unbolt it and this comes off, sign's gone, the awning's back to its original shape and appearance. The request originally was to replace a banner that was strung along just below the awning. It was hanging down, providing some additional identification of the business, which is Shannon's Cheesecake. That awning, that banner is a temporary sign, so they were only allowed to keep it for a certain period of time. And this is an attempt to provide the additional signage outside and more visible at street level than Shannon's permanent sign, which is above the awning on the sign band of the building below the windows of the second floor. They've given us this, which was in your packet, as an example of the types of lettering they could use. As we understood it from conversation with the sign company, it wouldn't necessarily be the different colors, but it would be one or more of those designs. Now, yesterday we received an email advising us that the sign company who's representing Shannon's Cheesecake couldn't make it due to an emergency. So there is no one here from the sign company. But he also included an alternative with a different appearance to the lettering, and more muted, more standardized, rather than sort of neon look with multicolors within each letter. He's proposed something like this as an alternative subject to your approval, one way or the other, they would modify their sign to meet that approval. The overall sign size is slightly over 35 square feet. They're allowed 40. That's counting the base of the sign on the wall above at the sign band, as well as the sign on this proposed new sign band. They don't count either the freestanding sign that sits on the sidewalk or any signage in the window. Both of those are handled under different provisions of the code rather than under the sign code. At this point, that's the information I have. I'm certainly willing to try to answer any questions. Again, it is within your ability as part of this review and approval to pick one or the other of the options that were presented to you. And we will pass that information on to the applicant. I'll conclude my presentation and be happy to try to answer any questions you may have.
So you're saying there's no one here representing the applicant?
No one here representing the applicant this morning, no, sir.
Are there any questions, comments about this, Mr. Buchanan?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Worley, let's see, the building is located kind of on a downward slope, and I noticed that the projected sign is going to hang down a little bit more than it was before. I guess clearance is not an issue.
There's sufficient height there to allow more than the minimum required clearance, height clearance.
Even to the right side of the...
Yes.
Okay, all right.
And if you look at the diagram they provide us, the section through the sign, it extends downward only about 4 inches more than the existing awning.
Originally, it was just some awning material hanging down. Now we have a hard frame.
That's correct.
Mr. Burford?
Yes, a couple of questions. That was a question of mine also, whether this hard surface now, some NBA ball player walks down the street and hits canvas, it's not a big deal. But so this is easy. You may not have the answer to this. So this is easy to be removed. Do you have any idea whether they're proposing to remove this periodically to put different words up, or when a new business comes, probably would be my
Our understanding is the intent is permanent signage, one of these two options of permanent signage. When this business leaves, the entire band would be removed to restore the awning back to its current condition.
And from your information, is this the sign? I mean, are these the words and the...
I believe this is the intent. It would have those words. The other side of the sign also says wraps, like the
As it turns the corner.
Yeah. This is the intended sign, yes, sir.
Okay. Well, I would make a comment. There's a lot going on here, in my estimation. I've been down there a couple of times, and there's a lot of signage in the windows, which you say are part of a different portion of the code. I understand that. So then there's the sidewalk sandwich board sign, and I understand that they're trying to get more visibility for their business. The sign above doesn't do a whole lot for driving by. It's mainly walking by, and I can see that this would improve that. I don't know. It seems like a lot going on to me. I'm not opposed to them having more signage on that canvas, but the way we've seen it in other situations, it's kind of built into the into the awning material, whatever the material is, and I guess I would prefer to see that, have a little motion there. This is a pretty clever way to put on new signs. I congratulate them on thinking about this. I would not be in full favor of the one that's in our packet, which has the multicolored letters and outlines around them. Maybe it's just the presentation here, as that white background really makes these things jump from that green awning, but maybe just slightly more muted would be. There's just a lot going on. on the building, all those signs. Just a comment.
Thank you.
Well, I'd like to comment. I really do think that that's a very clever way to make that sign totally reversible. It doesn't even impact the awning at all.
Right.
It's just, there in front. And so the question would be how much, and I have a little bit of a problem too with this, all the color and that's a little bit much. And I noticed how clever this picture is, this one, how they really they took that picture at a time when you couldn't see any of the signage on the window, and you think, oh my goodness, they really need a little more, a little bit more eye-catching signage up, other than just that little Shannon's up there on the top there.
Yeah,
So. We need some kind of a compromise there, I think.
It is within the purview of the board to recommend a single color or to approve a single color. For instance, you could approve the top sign application and tell them that it's the white background and the red cheesecake color, if that's within your purview to make that kind of a recommendation.
Boy, we all kind of have come to this sort of come to the same conclusion on this. I'm going to reiterate a little bit what Mr. Burford said, and I'm going to go a little further than that. I think that the sign that was designated for that space, the one up on top that says Shannon's Cheesecake, I agree that is almost a worthless sign for them, unless you're standing across the street and you really don't see what the product is. You just really see the Shannon. So I think they do need some additional signage, and this is a clever way of doing it. I think that the second presentation would be better, and I agree with Robert that white background is a little bit excessive. But and all the signs that they've done, the windows, the lunch board out on the street, were all professionally done. I mean, they've got a lot of stuff going on in the door, and the Scotch tape signs that people put in their windows is not done quite as well as their professional signage. But I think it leads more to the city more than the tenant. They're doing what's permissible, and they're asking for our approval. But it seems to me that this is a good case for the city ought to reevaluate the Historic Preservation Courthouse District Code for signage, because it's hard to imagine that this is the intent. There's hardly a square inch on this space that doesn't have signage on it. And when you look at the ones in the windows and you look at the lunch board sign, they say exactly the same thing. Right. Just 3 big signs in your face that say the same thing. So I understand why the tenant's trying to do this, but it seems to me that it's a good case for the city to take a little closer look at these window signage and the things that people do on the lunch boards in addition to the permitted 40 square feet, because they may be under the 40 square feet on the awning and the one up above, but if you add it all up, they're probably over 100 square feet of signs in that space.
Yeah.
So I agree with what everybody else has said. I have a question. They are drilling into the support for this awning. Do they have to get permission from the owner to do that? Have they done
Yes.
that?
Yes, they will require the permission of the owner for the building permit, and we will also require they provide us sufficient engineering data to know that drilling those holes doesn't in some way reduce the structural integrity of the framework. So
Okay.
they'll have to provide both that and the owner's signature on the application for permit.
All right. And then you probably answered this question, but on one of their submittals it says permanent removal. And it seems a contradiction in terms, but it appears as, I'm not sure what they mean by that. I mean, it sounds like it's a sign they want to leave there, but it can be removed at some time.
It would be removed at the time this business leaves, or a new business comes in and would have to go through the same process for approval.
Okay. Well,
That is a little contradictory.
my other comment is, and it's about, in general, what sometimes happens here. We're getting to the point, we brought this up in the last month or two, where we get applicants who submit things and they don't show up. And we're kind of expected to rubber stamp. And it seems to me, my opinion is I think we should continue this so that we can go over the issues that we've talked about with the owner, particularly modifying maybe the white on this and doing some things to mitigate it. And when people make a presentation and they don't care enough to show up, it's a little bit frustrating for us because we're trying to make a decision without getting the owners or the tenants' input. So
We understand that. And
my opinion would be that we should continue this, but I'll leave that up to how the commission wants to go ahead. If it is approved today, I think that white background should be changed, and I think the second iteration without all the neon colors would be more preferable. So those are my comments. Anyone else?
Would you entertain a motion to carry this over?
I'll make a motion. I would make a motion that we vote to continue item HP 14-010 until such time as the owner or their representative can appear before the commission.
Second.
There's been a motion made and seconded. All those in favor signify by raising your right hand and saying aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion passes 5-0.
That's good.
All right, the next item is HP 14-010, 343 South Mount Vernon. It's a request for approval for a 6-foot-high fence on the south side and retaining wall in the rear and side yard. Mr. Worley will make the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We've included in your packet some color photos that were provided of the site, starting with the front of the property. You can see the design up here. The request in particular is to install both a fence along the front of the property on the south side and then along the south property line to a point where it meets up with a garage on the neighboring property, and you can see the garage in the back of this photo. At that point, the issue becomes one of a retaining wall that goes from that point down along the side of this property, the applicant's property, adjacent to and just off to the left of the photo of the garage on the neighbor's property. So it changes from an above-ground issue to a below-ground issue at the point where that front face of the garage is seen. On the site plan, let me see if I can zoom in. I'm not.
Excuse me, Joy, is there a retaining wall there now? Because it's hard to see from the photos that were presented.
I don't believe there's a retaining wall. I believe there's a short section of perhaps an old wall along there that's acting as a retaining wall.
And they want it, that's part of this to reinforce that? Or?
I believe that existing wall is on the neighbor's property.
Okay.
So I believe this is a replacement that would allow the ground level from the point where the retaining wall is installed to be raised on the applicant's property and allow for a shorter set of stairs leading up to the rear deck. You can see from this photo there's a substantial elevation difference between the deck and the existing ground level. But on the right-hand side of this photo, you can also see that's the edge of the garage on the neighbor's property. So the intent is to fill a portion of that, provide a retaining wall to hold it in place, and then reduce the height of the steps or the number of steps leading up to the deck.
Okay.
The fence in the front is the primary impact on the appearance of the property. There is a section that runs from the front face of the house just behind the porch, and you can see in this photo there's an existing fence back there behind the remnants of the chimney. That fence would be is proposed to be replaced all along that south property line to the front face of the garage with a white vinyl material for endurance. We've seen a number of these come before you over the past few years. They will last nearly forever as opposed to a painted wood fence. And then at that point, again, at the front face of the garage, it drops to an issue of a retaining wall, which will not be visible to the public or from the street and would not affect the appearance or the historical integrity of the house in any way. So the real issue, I think, from an appearance standpoint will be replacement with the white vinyl fence, and the retaining wall is sort of hidden by that, and behind the neighbor's garage, further back, it's more of a practical consideration as opposed to something that would affect the historic integrity of the home and the property. Property owner is here, and I will conclude my report and attempt to answer any questions you may have, but he would be available for questions also.
I have a question, and I think I know the answer, but I just want to make sure. The white fence is going to come down the property line and tie in to the corner of the house right where the porch is, so that if you show, can you show those pictures where the chimney should?
Yes, so I guess that is a question for the property owner. The current fence is behind behind the chimney from the street appearance. So the drawing that was submitted to us shows the fence in front of the chimney.
And
on the
probably in front of that window, it looks like, too, because
Yes.
it's behind the, okay. All right. Commissioners, are there any questions? The applicant's here if you want to speak with him.
And there's the window that you were just referring to.
Right. Yeah, that was, so it looks like it's going to tie in here.
Right there, yeah.
Okay.
That's the appearance on the site drawing, yes, sir. So perhaps the owner applicant can answer that question.
Yeah, there's got to be a window right here. Yeah. Okay. Any questions, the applicant? I have one question for you. If you could state your name and address, please.
Harry Brown, 343 South Mount Vernon. I live at that house.
Thanks, Mr. Brown. You know, I drove up and down the street and I saw there were other similar chimneys. Is that is abandoned at this point?
Yes, when I bought the house a year ago, the chimney had been dismantled, and not under this particular project, but I am going to have that restabilized and put a gas insert in. So my intent was not to rebuild the chimney, just put a catalytic converter. And I thought the fence would kind of soften that view.
Yeah. So you're going to try to reuse that chimney
Yes.
at some point?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I didn't know because it looked like it was starting to come off
No,
the wall.
there's a lot of issues with settling in that area, and that's one of them which I'm going to address in my next project.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions, Mr. Brown? Okay. Do we have a motion? Somebody?
Mr. Chairman, motion to approve HP 110-03-042 at 343 South Mount Vernon.
Thank you, Mr. Edelbrock. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Ms. Hastings. All those in favor signify by raising your right hand and saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Brown. The next item is HP 14-012, 117 East Gurley. It's the Elks Theater, Historic Preservation District Number 2. It's a request for approval and approval for removal and modification of roof mechanical housing. Go ahead. It's easy to say. Mr. Worley, if you make the presentation, please.
Thank you. Hopefully the presentation goes better than
Yeah, I hope so too.
This is actually a pretty straightforward request. At this point in time, and I've given you elevation drawing showing the side of the building, there are two projections above the roof of the building, one for an elevator tower and one for stair access. The elevator tower is here and the stair access is here. The elevator tower and the equipment in it are no longer necessary because of modern improvements to elevator mechanical equipment, and that tower is being requested permission to approve removal of it so that you have one projection above the roof of the building removed with that. The stair access is being proposed to be changed from a full stair walkway up to and including a door So this structure would be removed, the door would be removed, the stairs would be removed, and a ladder and hatch access would be placed in its stead. The ladder and hatch access would be, for all practical purposes, invisible from anywhere other than above. And it would remove another projection from the roof of the building that's no longer required or necessary for safety or maintenance standards. Those two locations are shown in plan view here just to give you an idea of their proximity to each other. And again, you can see from here, they're practically in line. They're in the middle of the building away from the edges, and they project up high enough to be seen from anywhere, practically anywhere except from the west. In this particular case, we do have the architect here who would be able to answer any questions you may have about this or the necessity of this. And with that, I'll conclude my presentation and open for questions.
Okay. Are there any questions, comments by anybody? We have a familiar face willing to give us information. No? Frank, you're off the hook, I guess. It's good to see you again, though. All right. Do we have any? Do we have a motion?
Mr.
Robert,
Chairman?
your turn. Oh, sure.
Of course.
Perfect.
I would move that the agenda item HP 14-012, request approval for removal modification of roof mechanical housing on the Elks Opera House building be approved.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
We have a second by Mr. Buchanan. All those in favor signify by raising your hand and saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you. Thanks, Frank.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good luck. All right. Let me see if I can find my agenda here. Next item is just an update of current events or other items of note. Mr.
I
Worley,
have nothing for you this morning,
you
sir.
have nothing for us. Kat would have had all sorts of things for
No
us.
doubt. She's withheld those, so you'll appreciate it when she's back.
Anybody else?
I've driven by and observed the Haziam Hotel sign, which looks like it's very much nearing completion.
Yeah.
Looks very good. The brick actually ties in very well with the building.
That's good. I have a question. Do you know how much longer the chain link fence is going to be in that vacant lot on Whiskey Road?
Our understanding is the wrought iron has been completed, and that should be occurring probably before your next meeting.
Okay,
Great.
that will be nice. Any other comments? Okay, that being the case, I'm going to adjourn the City of Prescott Preservation Commission meeting for July 11th, 2014. Thank you.